Hey, Dr. Shepherd here. I am glad to be with you once again on a Friday afternoon slash evening. And so thankful that with daylight savings time, it is still light outside. Come on in the room and join us. We're going to have a wonderful discussion. I am so excited that you are with us today. Just want to give people some time to come on in the room to join us for today's broadcast of Ask the Doctors. You have tuned in to Ask the Doctors, and I just want to let you know today is Friday, April the 2nd, 2021. Good Friday for those who celebrate Easter, the resurrection weekend. And so this is a most holy week for the Christian faith. And so we're so glad that you all are here. We're grateful for those who support week after week after week after week. Last year, we celebrated our 1 year anniversary of doing the broadcast. And so I'm so thankful. We're now on our 53rd consecutive week of bringing information to you in regards to what is going on in our society, and particularly how it relates to our mental health. Today, I just want to just bring real quickly just a couple of facts to you, and we're going to jump right in because this discussion is hot. All right. When I say it's hot, it literally is that hot. Is this because people are burning, people are itching to hear what we have to say today. Oh man, Dr. Tandy is out there. Thank you, watching. And so thank you for watching. Share. I want to let those people know who are doing the replay. I want you to go back and replay this video, this broadcast. Rhonda Hayes is out there. Thank you, Rhonda, for your continued support. I do owe you an email. Look for my email to get back to you. Thank you for all those who email and write in, and thank you for your positive comments. Thank you, Chris. Go ahead, identify yourself for those who are out there. Please say hello, greetings. I want to give you just a little bit of time before I bring in our guests. I don't want to do too much of an intro because so much of what I normally talk in an intro is going to be part of today's show. But just want to give you a little bit of time to get set up. Again, I greet those who are going to watch our replay. We have so many people who go back and watch, triple the number of views from our live views as we are dealing with certain topics. And this particular topic today is one of most importance. I was just reading where we were last year, March 24th of 2020, and it was said that by Easter of 2020 that we would be back in our churches. And of course, we know that was not right. But now here we go again, another Easter holiday. And now the topic today is it safe to worship in person this Easter Sunday? So that's what we're going to talk about today. I've got some wonderful guests with me. I'm going to start with our senior guest. I hope you don't mind me saying that, but he gonna get me as the other guests are laughing. But this is a man I have great respect for and have followed for many years. He is a mentor of mine, and that is none other than the Dr. Terrence Roan, who is a bishop and pastor within the Church of God in Christ. So Bishop Dr. Roan, Dr. Terrence Roan, how are you doing, sir?
Fine, and I am going to get you for that. I really am. Nevertheless, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Absolutely. You want to tell the people a little bit about what you do, sir?
Yes, sir. My name is Terrence Roan. I'm internal medicine and pulmonary critical care medicine, board certified in pulmonary and internal medicine. I've been practicing, I guess it's my 25th year. Gosh, I guess I am the old man. And I've been practicing here in Southern California. I'm the director of the pulmonary division for CareMore Health Plan under Anthem. And I'm also a full-time pastor for the Mount Sinai Church of God in Christ and the bishop of the jurisdiction of Brazil in the Churches of God in Christ.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Pleasure to have you again. I'm just going to bring everybody on, Bishop. Next in line, I'm going to bring this person up who I have known for several years, also have watched her matriculate through medical school. We even attended the same church back in Chicago and now attend the same church here in Baltimore. And that is Dr. Jessica Queen. How you doing, Dr. Queen?
Good evening, everybody.
Yes. How you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for having me on again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I tell you, when you and Dr. Roan come on, I mean, it's awesome. It's just an awesome mix. And so you all provide so much information, truthfully. People will come back. I've even had some people come back and ask about shows a couple months ago that you, Dr. Roan, at the time, Dr. Varner did. So thank you again. Tell the people a little bit about who you are and what you specialize in, what you do.
Sure. So I'm much more junior in my career than Dr. Roan, but I'm board certified in internal medicine and infectious diseases. And I spend my time seeing patients and doing research on various infections.
Wonderful, wonderful. And glad to have her. And then my friend, who I have even traveled with to do missions work, medical missions work. Had heard of this person prior to me even meeting her from different people and said, you just have to meet her. You just have to meet her. And so when I finally did meet her, I concurred, and our spirits, again, just connected right away, like I've known her for a long time. This is Dr. Nicole Sims, her first time on this particular broadcast. And so we're so happy to have you. Dr. Nicole Sims, welcome to Ask the Doctors. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you, Dr. Shepherd. I am so excited to be here, and thank you for inviting me finally.
Oh, yes. Oh,
you knew I was going to do it. You knew I was going to do it.
Oh, yeah. We have, her schedule is so packed, she had to, fit us in. I've been trying to get her for months. Dr. Sims, tell the people a little bit about what you do.
I am board certified internal medicine. I practice as a hospitalist, the chief hospitalist for Dignity Health Group. And I've been practicing for about 8 years now, almost 9. And I'm on the front lines, and I'm seeing patients in the hospital daily.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. So again, before we get started, I want to kind of reset the room, as they state. I want you to make sure that you are sharing this particular broadcast with your social media networks. Call somebody, text them, say, hey, look, you got to join in. Some of the questions that you've been asking, that you've been pondering, that you've been even scared to ask. We're going to deal with those questions today. I just want to help set the tone, and we're going to jump into that important question that reeled so many of us in. What I want to do is just kind of set the foundation, though, as to where we are with the pandemic. So, Dr. Roan, if you don't mind starting us out, in your eyes, where are we in this pandemic? And then I don't know if you want to put it specifically to the Southern California area or to the U.S., however you want to deal with that, sir.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having us. And I'm so honored to be on the same panel with my distinguished colleagues. And I think it's wonderful that all of us are people of faith and committed to Jesus Christ, but yet practicing medicine at a standard that is far above beyond the standard of care, because we're all committed to excellence. I'm just glad to be among this number today. As far as this pandemic is concerned, it's been a real roller coaster. Back in January, when we first heard that it might be coming, people started getting sick. And then by March, that dreaded March, we just had a mushroom of infections, and a lot of our religious gatherings were unfortunately the stage for large numbers of people being infected and dying. Just speaking for the African American community, the Church of God in Christ in particular, we lost over 30 prominent leaders in our church, including 2 prominent bishops on our general board. And it just continued to get worse as we went into the summer, and then we went into a little lull, and it looked like it was going to get better. Everybody went out to the beach in California, and they took their mask off, and it went back up in the ceiling again. And by August, we were back in panic mode. In October, it was crazy. And I would say November and December into January, to me, were the most horrific times for California, because we literally were like New York was looking at the beginning of this thing. just speaking for California, and Dr. Sims knows this, we literally had people hanging out of the windows, out of the doors of the ER, nowhere to go, on gurneys or with active infections of COVID, with nowhere to go, no place to put them, in tents outside, admitted, but not anywhere to sit in the hospital. And ICUs were at active capacity, and we were running out of oxygen. It was crazy to see where we were. I would say that up to half of my census on a given day was COVID. And then we started to see a gentle taper of the numbers. We started vaccinating people in December, and just now we're beginning to see those numbers beginning to go down. Speaking for California, our R values have gone below 1, and that's nice because it hasn't been like that for a long time. So far below 1 that our governor has actually started increasing the permission to increase capacity in different places. Gyms are opening up again. Restaurants are opening up again very slowly. It seems as though we're on the mend. However, and I want Dr. Queen to speak to this. The problem is, and this is what I see in California, is I think we're taking our ease in Zion too quickly. I think people are becoming too debonair and bodacious in their activities, not really exercising social distancing. Our own denomination actually is not really acting in the best interest of its people. We had our first national meeting. Unfortunately, it was a funeral of one of our general board members this last Tuesday, Dr. McKinney and Dr. Shepard. Everybody was sitting shoulder to shoulder. We had masks on, but the stage was packed out just like it was a convocation. In the audience, we were packed out. I guess everybody thought that the other guy was going to do it, but we weren't sitting in a social distance fashion. It was really hard to watch, hard to be there, actually. So I would say we're ebbing the possibility of a spike if we're not careful, even though we are vaccinating people, because again, we should not stop exercising precautions. But that's just my perspective for California.
Yeah. And you already put the challenge out there. So Dr. Queen, respond to what Dr. Roan is saying.
So everything Dr. Roan said is correct. I think if you look at the timeline of spikes in new cases, we're doing much better now than we were just a couple of months ago. Things really peaked around the beginning of the year. But we're still having 50 to 60,000 cases daily across the country. Right. And, I think a year ago, our actual case numbers were quite low at the beginning of the pandemic, but our concern and our level of caution was high. And I think people just got fatigued. You get used to the new normal, and people have relaxed. And I think a combination of that, as well as just natural increase in infections, and then all of the gatherings around the holidays, all contributed to those peaks in December and January. So, I think it's very exciting that we have now in the US 3 FDA approved vaccines that are highly effective, and that more and more people are getting vaccinated every day. But there's a bit of a race between the spread of new infections and the spread of vaccination. And we really have to do our part to give give time for the vaccine to really be disseminated. It really would be a shame to continue to have so many thousands of deaths sort of here in the final hour when we're really close to protecting more people. So I think now is the time to remain vigilant.
Absolutely. Thank you. And before I let you speak, Nicole, so there's something that I've been talking about, and I want you to address it even more. I'm almost using it as kind of like as a presentation topic. It's called "Beware of the Plateau." Beware of the plateau. There's danger in the plateau, and that's a little bit about what Dr. Queen was talking about. So can you speak to that? The danger of the plateau, or beware of the plateau?
Absolutely. I would say I agree with Dr. Rohn. When even looking at my own two hospitals that I work at, numbers are low. COVID numbers are low, and so it almost gives us a false sense of security that COVID, we're done with COVID. We don't have to wear masks anymore. We don't have to, look at Texas, they're not wearing masks, and so there's this kind of idea that COVID is over, so we can go back to the way that things were. But when we talk about, vaccination, like Dr. Queen said, and by the way, this panel is like so amazing of all these people. Dr. Queen, you're amazing. But when we talk about vaccination, we still only have in this country maybe 17% vaccinated. So we talked about in our last the last one that I did with you, the live, about herd immunity and what herd immunity means, and that, we need to get closer to 90% vaccination until we can really get herd immunity. So we're nowhere out of the woods. And although numbers are looking better in terms of new COVID cases, we're still 50,000 cases, new cases, which is nowhere near COVID going away. And so we still have to be vigilant. I know that everyone is tired of wearing masks, they're tired of social distancing, but we're almost there. We're almost, to that point. And, probably a few more months we can get, better numbers, but we just have to stay vigilant.
Yeah. Now, I'm wondering, is the surge, and I guess, I don't want to use the word surge, is the uptick, because it hasn't been a surge just yet, it hasn't been declared a surge, is this due to variants? And I don't know who wants to tackle that. And then I'm going to move on to how do we handle it if it is variants that are out there? Is it really due to the variants that we're seeing? UK variant, Brazilian variant, South African variant. I feel like there's another one. I think there's even a California variant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we got our own now.
Yeah,
there's a couple in California.
Right.
I would say you can't blame the variants for what you're seeing right now. You're finding isolated cases here and there. I think the uptick is just basically due to people just taking down their mask and throwing caution to the wind, in my opinion. You found that was 2 weeks ago, so it's old news. We found out about 3 cases confirmed in California, the Brazilian variant. Then I heard about our new variant that we got on our own. The UK variant is in a couple of places in the United States, but you're not seeing huge surges of people coming out with these variants. You're just seeing the regular garden variety, same old corona that's actually doing all of this, because we're just not exercising wisdom and common sense. We just, as Dr. Sims says, we're almost there, but not quite. And God forbid that we should, start celebrating before we cross the finish line, because it could really backfire on us. And we don't want to do that. And amazingly so, I just have to say this, it's interesting that if you look, history repeats itself. And when the Spanish flu was coming out in the 1919, in California, things were getting better. And in San Francisco, the mayors declared they didn't have to wear a mask anymore. And all they had was, the cloth things, right? Mm-hmm. When he declared that, they had a huge surge in the middle of the pandemic. They thought they were coming out of the woods. And actually they had a huge surge of many more people died in San Francisco because of that ill-fated declaration by the mayor. And it's interesting that here, 100 years later, the same thing is happening. I think we really need to study history and see what happened. And amazingly so, with all of our technology and all of our modern advances in medical science, the death toll in the United States from the Spanish flu 100 years ago is pretty much 600,000. We're almost there now.
Wow.
And that's all the modern medicine we've got. And it's not because of it's a monster virus, it's because we're making the same mistakes now.
Wow. Who wants to there's so much I can say to that. Who wants to comment to that? Yes. Come on, jump on in.
Yeah, I agree that we are not seeing we are seeing variants, and especially in San Bernardino County, we are seeing some of the UK variants, but it's not as many as one would think. I agree with Dr. Rohn. It's just that, people are tired and they are not socially distancing and doing the things they're going to do. They're having gatherings, Super Bowl parties, just anything, quinceañeras, like all kinds of stuff, like parties and things like that. They're just throwing caution to the wind. And so with that, you get more exposure. And with the vaccination rate being so low, your protection is low. And so we're finding more cases of COVID. And for us, it seems like the new COVID cases that we are seeing are younger patients. Before we were seeing in their 60s, 70s, old people, high risk people, but now we're seeing younger patients that are a little bit more sick than before. But this is like my own, observation. I haven't really studied this, but it seems that the patients now that we're seeing, they're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, and they're coming in pretty sick. And so that is concerning.
Have you been seeing that, Dr. Queen?
Well, as I think I've mentioned before, spend currently a minority of my time treating patients.
Sure.
So my recent patient-directed care has been seeing patients with suppressed immune systems with a variety of infections. So they're a little bit of a special population. Those are our cancer and transplant patients who are, of course, at quite high risk of serious illness. I do want to just piggyback on the other comments that I agree. I don't think the variants are driving the numbers as much as human behavior. We are up about 8% in new cases this week compared to last week. So we're moving in the wrong direction. And various state labs around the country and local labs are sequencing strains to try to sort of track the variants. It's just a snapshot. But the CDC does publish that data online every week. And, they're reporting the UK variant is the one that's been reported most frequently in the US. They're reporting a total of 12,000 cases, hundreds of the South African variant. So it's very much, from what we know, a minority of the new cases.
Gotcha. Bishop, I'll tell you, you really hit a nerve with me regarding history and history repeating itself. That really was a great a history lesson in regards to San Francisco and how they celebrated, I guess, prematurely. And we don't want that to happen. And this is a nice segue into what is happening even this particular weekend. I'm a part of a group of folks who received the Psychiatric Times, and the headline, the last one that they sent us, is an optimistic prognosis for 2021. Isn't that something? Even within the medical journals, they talk about an optimistic prognosis for 2021. And I purposely say this because so many times people think we as physicians can be quite pessimistic and negative and things like that. So I want you to know, at least over here in psychiatry. No, but I'm seriously, all the physicians out here, we have an optimistic prognosis. We really do. And we're going to save that for the end of the show. I don't want to jump the gun here. But let me tell you, people are struggling as to the information that was just given. And we started it like this today for a reason. There's a method to the madness because people are wondering now, how do I worship? This is Easter Sunday. And so many people are anxious. I was just reading an article just before we came on about people saying, my God, I just can't wait to get into the house of worship, whether they be Catholic, whether they be Presbyterian, whether it be Pentecostal, even holiness churches. I mean, just across the denominations, they're anxious to get in. And the question, though, is it safe for me to be able to worship in person on Easter Sunday? So I want to take the next minutes now to talk about that. I don't want to answer the question and say, well, yes, it is safe, or no, it isn't safe. I want us to talk about how do we prepare people that if they do choose to go to worship in person on Easter, what they need to be aware of and how they need to move forward. So let's start with Bishop, because Bishop is a pastor. So I want to hear a little bit about what he has to say. And then we're going to, talk to Dr. Queen, Dr. Sims. I know Dr. Sims has been working with Dr. Rohn since they attended the church. And so let's start with the pastor and see what he has to say.
So, again, California is quite a spectacle in this regard because we've been going back and forth with our governor on this, even way back in May when many pastors became defiant and opened their doors at the 1st of May. And actually went to the Supreme Court over it because they were actually ticketing congregations and shutting people down who were who were violating. And then the Supreme Court, I guess, got behind us finally and said we can open. But there are churches in Southern California that have been open since May and have continued to be open through the surge. Many of these churches would be considered mega churches, and the thousands of people who actually come together, no social distancing, or very little, mask on, mask off, and pretty much throwing caution to the wind in the name of faith. Some pastors have actually gotten in the pulpit mocking their congregants who are wearing masks, saying, "Oh, God healed me of cancer, he'll heal you too. So why are you worried about it? Why don't you have faith?" It's to me, it's like those guys down south who play with rattlesnakes in church. That's what it looks like to me. You're just taking your life in your hand. And in my opinion, and I don't want to bash my colleagues, but I think it's irresponsible for a pastor to take such a debonair attitude. And to form, some of these same pastors that did this had massive outbreaks in their churches among the congregations. And I will tell you that some of them are hiding it. They're saying, "Oh, we haven't heard any. There's no outbreak in our congregation. We haven't heard of one case." The devil is alive. I know you have cases.
Because they're dead. That's why they.
Hello. One pastor is counting that right now. Another pastor came to do a wedding at his church, caught COVID, and died. So don't tell me that's not happening. Anyway, that being said, what we did is we're trying to comply with what the governor was doing, and what he had was this tier. Dr. Sims, help me. Purple was the worst, where first he said nobody meet inside, only outdoor gatherings. Then you had, which one? The next one was red, orange.
Or orange. I can't remember.
Red or orange, one of them. Where you could have 25% or 100 people, whatever was less. And then the next one, whichever one it was like 75%. And then green was everything's back to normal. We've been in purple for a long time. And they changed the purple from outside to 25% or 100 because of the Supreme Court ruling, because they couldn't tell people not to come in church. So they stopped policing the streets and trying to shut people down. What we did in our congregation is I met with my board and I told them what we would do is watch our values. For you, though, folks that are watching, our values is the amount of, or the rate of infectivity, how much one person can infect another person. And so when your R values are above 1, that means you're in a pandemic mode, because one person has the capacity to infect several people. And those R values were 1.2, 1.3, in some cases 1.5. They were high, very high in several of the counties that where our congregants live. And so we were watching Riverside County, San Bernardino County, and Los Angeles County. And by the time we got around to January and February, those R values had dropped below 1, and they are consistently below. Now you've got 0.61, 0.62, which is a substantial drop. It's almost a half in some cases. And we felt that when those numbers came that low, we would feel safer coming back to the sanctuary. And so we used that data to say, let's come back. And so now what we're doing is we're going with the CDC guidelines of gathering. We're taking the standard of 25% and 100, whichever is greater, and our less. In our case, is 25%. So our sanctuary, we come up with 60. Was it, Dr. Sims?
60
people.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're following. We're going by the code, by the book. We have people taking temperatures at the door. We're registering people at the door, writing down their names and the contact information for purposes of contact tracing. We're asking them screening questions and developed protocols for what we do for people who don't meet criteria. When we have them come into the sanctuary is socially distanced. We are socially distancing groups of people, so families can come and sit together. We're not having children's church right now because of that. So children are in with their parents. Services are 90 minutes flat or less. You know, now folks that are watching, you know anything about Church of God of Christ, we like to have church, and we. Dr. Queen's laughing.
That's the biggest challenge.
Holy Ghost gets a hold of us. A service that's supposed to be hour and a half could be 3 hours, no problem. Shouting and dancing and falling on the floor. We're not able to do that right now. The spirit of the prophet must be subject to the prophet right now, because at 90 minutes we're gone.
Right.
We are wiping down the pulpit. We're wiping down the mics. Everybody wears masks who's not in the mic. we're just taking all those precautions. We have a neat little machine that fogs down the sanctuary. We started on a soft reentry the 21st of March, where we came in for one service. And this Sunday, we will have 2 services, and we're already pre-registered. Everybody's pre-registering and pre-assigned seating, so they know where they're going to sit. First week we did it, we had them registered, but we labeled the seats wrong. that was horrible.
That's right.
Some of the saints had a serious attitude. Oh my goodness. Anyway, brought them out of the spirit. So we finally got that nipped in the bud. So as of this Sunday, 2 services, and we'll see what happens, because I will tell you that even though people say they're coming, a lot of people cheese out and don't come at the last minute. So, and that's consistent everywhere. So we're just following CDC guidelines and just taking real slow and taking it on a week by week basis to see whether we're going to have 1 service or 2 services at that 25% capacity. And as the numbers get better and we're given more latitude, we'll do more.
Gotcha. Let me just reset the room real quick and say thank you, Eric Williams. Dr. Eric Williams is out there, who's been a part of the show. And you know Eric Williams, Jessica. He is out there watching, and he actually is a protege, Dr. Rohn, of Bishop George McKinney. And great guy. I see some questions out there. I'm going to ask that question. Thank you, Michelle Sanchez, for the question. I'm going to save that for Dr. Queen. But I want Dr. Sims real quick just to talk about her experience with working with this committee at the church. I want to hear more about this, because people need to hear not just what the pastor's doing or what the leader is thinking. People need to hear from the congregant. And Dr. Rohn is blessed to have Dr. Sims in his congregation, and so he's utilizing the people that are there. So let's hear a little bit how this is working and what position that puts you in.
Yeah, and so there are a lot of moving pieces when we talk about bringing people back into the sanctuary. So there are a lot. We have a teacher on our committee. We have a nurse practitioner. We have engineers. It's a well-rounded group of people, and our priority is really bringing people back into the sanctuary safely and letting their mind be at ease to worship freely. And I think this is a good point, and you as a psychiatrist know this, is that a lot of people have anxiety when they're coming back to the church. And, they don't know if they're going to catch COVID, if they're going to get sick, if anyone else is sick, if anyone's vaccinated, if, all these things. And so we wanted to take all of that out of their minds so that they could be at ease to worship. And one of the first things that we went from, like, people driving up to the parking lot, to registering, to being seated by the ushers, to offering, to getting back in their cars, to driving out the sanctuary and the parking lot. So from the first step to the last step. And we just wanted to make sure that people were safe. We looked at all the CDC guidelines and based our rules and regulations on that. We have a waiver that people sign saying that they haven't had any symptoms for 14 days. They haven't been in contact with anyone with COVID in 14 days, a liability release that people sign. And we have practitioners on site that are checking temperatures, and if someone is out of range, then we do additional screening. And if they, still are out of range, then we ask them to enjoy the service from their homes.
You ask them just like that.
and luckily, we haven't had anyone that has have any fever or had any symptoms or anything like that. But, we do have a script that, we use for any of those cases, just because we want to be consistent in everything that we do. And also we want to support our pastor with opening up the church. And also the things that we looked at are how worship would be different. And one of the things that came up last week was pastor had an altar call, wanted to have an altar call. And then how do we do that in COVID times, right? How do we, how do you flow in the anointing and still have good church and take all those things into account. If pastor wants to lay hands on people, how do we do that? How do we do that in these times? And so those are the things that we're thinking about and we're taking into consideration and making sure that that everyone is safe and that pastor is also safe too. So it's been, we've been working on this several weeks, even before we had our first soft service, and we have a debriefing and we talk about what did work, what didn't work. Like pastor said, the first week they mislabeled the seats. And so that was something that we had to work through and correct. And so I think for Easter Sunday, we've kind of gotten all the kinks out and all the bugs out. And so we'll be able to get people in safely, get people out safely, and really have a good time of worship.
That's good. That's good. Dr. Quinn, you want to comment on anything? And I do have a question that I want to ask you to answer.
Okay. So I think a few major points, because Dr. Sims and Dr. Roan hit on many of the important details. One is that churches should make decisions based on what's going on locally in terms of their COVID numbers. So there really is no universal, it's okay or it isn't across the board.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, every congregant has to make an individual assessment of their risk.
Yes.
So if you are elderly with uncontrolled diabetes and heart failure and you're not vaccinated, it might not be the right time for you to come back to in-person service.
Yes.
So, you really have to, I think this is a comment I've made the previous times I've been on your show, which is that none of this is black and white. It's all a spectrum of risk. And so you have to sort of be the steward of your own health and decide what risk is acceptable for you. For me personally, I sort of made in my mind that I wouldn't be attending in-person services or large gatherings if I were unvaccinated. It doesn't matter if it's been 9 months or 12 months. That was, to me, an unacceptable risk.
Yes.
I'm now vaccinated, so our home church, they're opening back up for limited capacity in-person services. I did not register to go this weekend. I knew it was limited capacity, and I sort of want to see them work out the kinks and then decide if I feel comfortable with how things are going. Everything I've heard so far is very encouraging. So the other point I want to make that I think Dr. Roan and Dr. Sims displayed beautifully is preparation. Church leadership really has to think through all of the details. Some of the things to think about that you want to have a plan ahead of time are, one, I think the idea of pre-registering is perfect because it helps you control your numbers. And then if you find out, Easter Monday that someone tested positive for COVID, then you can do contact tracing and notify people who were exposed. You want to think about all the nitty-gritty details. How are you going to collect offering? Are you going to pass plates? I probably wouldn't. Are you going to do communal communion dishes? I definitely wouldn't. Are you going to have a choir? Are you going to encourage the congregation to sing along or ask them to enjoy the music without singing? Because things like singing and shouting can increase the risk of spread. So you really have to sort of almost visualize every moment of the service and think about the risks inherent in that part of the service, and then decide how you're going to mitigate those risks.
Yeah.
And Dr. Queen makes a good point, and that you have to make a decision for yourself and based on your risk. If you are high risk population, it may not be a good idea for you to attend an in-person service. And so everyone has to make that decision, for themselves. I think that's a really good point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Michelle Sanchez, and so thank you, Michelle, for your question. She was saying, if you're feeling sick, please stay at home. Is it true, though, that some people are asymptomatic, meaning no symptoms, and can be contagious as well, right? You want to tackle that?
So go ahead. Infectious disease.
Thank you. So yes, that is correct. We do know that people who are asymptomatic can spread COVID. So that's why it's important, of course, even if you are meeting in person, for everyone to wear masks and to maintain 6 feet of personal distance. And that's why it's also important that when you're screening people, you ask about symptoms, but you also ask, have you been exposed? So if you've been around someone who has COVID or COVID-like symptoms and they're waiting for their test, or if you have a pending test, you should not be attending. So, anecdotally, I'm aware of people who were exposed to COVID in their workplace, for instance, because a coworker came to work knowing they had a pending COVID test and they felt fine, so they didn't worry about it. And then their test later came back positive, and then they exposed other people. So you should be asking about all of those exposure issues as well.
Wow.
And one thing we know about COVID is that there's maybe a 5-day lag between exposure and when you have symptoms. And in those 5 days or 7 days, whatever they're saying, that you are potential to spread it. So even if you don't necessarily have symptoms, you still have to be careful and wear your mask and all those kinds of things, because we don't know what part of this phase that you're in if you do have an exposure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bishop, we have another comment, and that's from Rhonda Alicia Hayes. She says something that I was hoping someone would ask, so I wouldn't have to ask it. And so she was made a comment, and I really want to form it as part of a question, because I'm seeing how society is moving in this direction. And so her comment is, I feel it's an individual choice of how they feel, but I would, as a pastor, let only those who have been vaccinated attend. So, as a pastor, again, I'm putting you a little bit in the hot seat, Doc. I can start us a little bit. Rutgers University out here on the East Coast, they have told their students that they cannot come back to campus unless they are vaccinated.
It's true.
And so there are going to be other universities who are going to start doing this. I'm certain. Do we implement that?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked that question. First of all, you have to think in terms of what is the mission of your church. Is your mission of your church just to be a social gathering for your congregants, or is it a place where people can come and get their lives right with God? Is it a place where people who are not saved can come and hear the gospel and be converted and have their lives changed? Mm-hmm. If that's the case, putting that kind of barrier on your service, you cannot come in here unless you get vaccinated, really will limit your ability to allow those walk-on people who actually come. Because what we do is we have a certain number of seats we reserve for walk-ons. So if somebody just decides, hey, I want to go to church. Wow, heard about Mount Sinai. Let me go down there. We do our best to accommodate those folks, get them in, because we don't want anybody to miss the opportunity to hear the gospel and to be in the presence of the Lord. So I don't think that would be the right thinking in terms of the mission of the church. If we're going to be a soul-saving station, as we call it, we've got to be accommodating to people who are not vaccinated. But and I think there's enough research to show that even though you may not be vaccinated, if you do the social distancing, and by the way, we got the hand sanitizers all over the church, and so we can wash their hands, and if you keep your mask on, that reduces risk by 75%, right? So if you put all these things in place, I think you can provide a safe environment short of people being vaccinated as they ought to be. That being said, there's another dimension to this. Now we're talking about national meetings, conventions, gatherings of the saints. Those situations, I believe, to the point of the person who just made that comment, I've been recommending to the national church leadership that we actually have a mandatory vaccination. I think if we're going to have a convocation this year in Memphis, this year we're coming back to Memphis, by all means, I think you ought to be able to present your card and say, I've been vaccinated, before you can register and get a room. Because to me, having a mass gathering of that magnitude this year without people being vaccinated is a recipe for disaster. Because even with masks, you got some people who are just not going to do right. And that's a convention like that. Our church doesn't need any more bad press about that.
Right.
Our church hit the news several times last year because they're having gatherings and outbreaks. We don't need any more of that. And beyond the press, just the safety, I think, to Dr. Queen's point, I think it's just not a safe thing to do. So I think we're going to have a meeting where 20, 30,000 people show up. Everybody who shows up ought to have a vaccination. And you still ought to socially distance.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder even if a city will allow you to even hold that gathering.
You wonder. You wonder.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anybody else want to comment on Ms. Hayes' comment?
Yeah, this is definitely something that we talked about as board members and things like that when we were talking about reopening the church. The challenge was at that time, people were having difficulty getting access to vaccines. And that has been, kind of some of the challenge, especially when we are like talking about people 65 and over. We were trying to get them vaccinated for 75 over 65. And then, whatever the tier was that you were on, people were having difficulty getting access to vaccination. And that's still a challenge in some places in California as well. I don't know about, across the country as well. So, you really kind of almost become exclusionary, and we want to be more inclusionary, right? We want to show the love of Christ. And so that's one thing that we did look at. And I think at some point, like Dr. Rohn said, when it comes to large gatherings like that, it's going to be a mandated, something that's mandated and for good reasons,
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Queen, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I would just add that I think if institutions are going to enforce a vaccine mandate, we need to have access and equity for that to really be.
Thank you. Very well stated, because that is what we are lacking. We're out here in Baltimore, and Baltimore has gotten another black eye. Urgent Biotech Solutions. I'm sure you all heard about that.
No, I didn't.
Oh, you ever heard about that, Doc? Oh, yeah. So the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is being produced here in Baltimore. Well, unfortunately, they made a human error.
Oh, yeah.
And 15 million doses of the vaccine were spoiled.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so we're making international news. I don't know if you want to comment more on that, Dr. Queen, but it's like Baltimore just keep getting black eye after black eye. It's like
now they didn't inject that bad vaccine in anybody, did they?
No.
They had to be discarded. Right.
Yeah. And so that's been one of the points that I've been able to lift up even through social media this past week, that there are certain checkpoints that the FDA has in place to make sure that certain things like this are caught. Some people are saying, well, that's why I'm not going to take the vaccine, because look at this. They mixed it wrong. They put this and that, and I already told you it wasn't mixed right. Yeah. I'm telling you what people are saying.
Let me chime in on that, because the other thing they're saying is you're giving the black man one thing and giving the white man something else. And we're trying to dispel this this myth that you're getting an inferior product in a minority community. And Dr. Queen, Dr. Chairman, I don't mean to stay thunder. Dr. Queen, could you address that, please? Because that's a concern. And we run across this all the time, trying to convince people, look, no matter what you're getting, you're going to be protected. But they think that whatever they get, for instance, they feel because Johnson is one shot and the other people are two shots, right, that Johnson is an inferior product. But the Johnson is being massively distributed in minority in communities of color. So they automatically assume that minority people are getting an inferior product. Would you address that, please?
Certainly. So, I think the bottom line I've been trying to tell people is that all of the available vaccines are highly effective and highly safe. And my suggestion is to take whichever one you have first access to.
Yes.
So, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, they're greater than 90% effective. And if you look at the trial data, for Pfizer, people in the vaccine arm, the rate of COVID was 0.03%. So then you hear the Johnson & Johnson numbers and you hear it's more like 70% effective, and that doesn't sound as good. But if you look at the vaccine trials, their rate of COVID, 0.3%. It's still tiny. And with all of the vaccines available in the US and then additional ones that are sort of in the pipeline, probably coming up for approval soon, out of the tens of thousands of people who received those vaccines in the trials, nobody who got COVID was hospitalized, and nobody died from COVID, and nobody died from the vaccines. So to me, that says I'd be happy to stick my arm out to get any of those. And I think certain communities, there's been a push for the Johnson & Johnson, because it can be hard for people to get off of work or follow up for the second shot.
Yes.
So a one-shot vaccine is great for mobile vaccination clinics, for people who don't have stable housing, for people who have a hard time getting to appointments because of their work or family responsibilities. So all of them are excellent vaccines.
It's interesting because first people are like, oh no, I'm waiting for the Johnson & Johnson, the one stop, and I'm not getting 2 vaccines.
Right.
And now it's available. People are like, oh no, I'm not getting that Johnson & Johnson.
Right.
That one's no good. And it's like, it's interesting.
Yeah, this I call it vaccine shopping. I don't understand. It's like you out there trying to pick like for a fruit or something like that, trying to pick the best apple. Look, fruit is just good for you, as opposed to just, the one that looks a little shinier than the other one. Let's eat the fruit. So yeah, I really am appreciative for you mentioning that, because as we're now rounding the corner, with the vaccine distributions, I'm liking what I'm hearing. I'm liking what I'm seeing. And let me just dispel this myth also about the Black community, because many people are saying that the Black community don't want the vaccine. And that's not the truth. The truth is that the access to get the vaccine is just not there. That's the problem. When the vaccine first came out in Baltimore, it was being delivered over at the Under Armour. The Under Armour headquarters. Anybody know anything about Baltimore? The Under Armour headquarters is across I-95. Unless you had a car, you couldn't get to that headquarters. And even when I drove over there, it's still a little bit confusing. So how are you going to have such a site over there where people got to get to that and say that you're being equitable? It's just not happening. What we also were seeing in Baltimore, and Dr. Queen can speak to this, is that Baltimore City was giving out the vaccine, but when you went to go look at the demographics of people receiving it, it was not the people who live in Baltimore City. Mm-hmm. They were coming from all over the state to Baltimore, because Baltimore at least had their site up and going, and you could actually get appointments. I hate to say it, I had to go to Baltimore City. I don't live in Baltimore City. I live in Baltimore County to go get the vaccine, because the county at the time was kind of slow in giving me an appointment. So I was like, skip this. Let me go to the city. And just like many others who I kind of joined in with many others and did the same thing. So I just say this, the vaccines, yes, they are working. I want to make sure that if you are in need of a vaccine, please let someone know. I've been able to work with some people in our communities. I'll just say this, is also great to hear that the pharmacies are delivering the vaccines. So that's great to hear. And even with the pharmacies delivering the vaccines, you can actually go to a pharmacy. Now, again, I'm pushing this, and so hopefully nobody gets upset with me, but you could go there and don't have an appointment. I've sent some people to the pharmacy that don't have an appointment and asked, do they have any leftover vaccine? Everybody who I've sent to do that actually got the vaccine on that same day. Because typically there are people who miss appointments. They don't show up, like Bishop was saying, they register for services and they don't show up. And so when you have that vaccine, especially for those that you have to keep in real cold storage, once you expose it, unless you use it, you end up wasting it. And people don't want to waste the vaccine. So yes, that's probably the longest I spoke today, which is a good thing. This has been wonderful. I'm just looking at some of the comments. Wow, Benna Bell, who I've known for a long time back from my days in Chicago, she mentioned how one of the school nurses died from COVID-19 after her second shot. Wow. Anybody want to comment on that?
So without knowing the precise details of that person's illness, and I'm sorry to hear about their passing, it's possible that the person acquired COVID between their first and second vaccines when you're not yet fully protected. And I think a lot of people get their first shot and let their guard down and are more likely to be exposed. You know, anecdotally, I've heard of a number of people who got COVID shortly after their first shot. And then, of course, you know, none of the vaccines are 100% effective. But I would just caution people to keep in mind that you're considered fully vaccinated 2 weeks after your final dose.
Absolutely. And again, we're talking about millions of people. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I think you make a good point. I've heard so many stories of people are like, oh, I got the COVID vaccine and then I got COVID. They gave me they gave me COVID. And, you know, the vaccine does not give you COVID. It's just not, you know, scientifically how it works, but you're not fully vaccinated until 2 weeks after your second vaccine. And with Johnson & Johnson, after the first vaccine, they say even up to 3 weeks maybe. But and so we just have to dispel some of those myths out there. There's so many like conspiracy theories about the COVID vaccine causing people, you know, to die. There hasn't been any linked deaths so far from COVID vaccine. And sometimes correlation, meaning things that happen temporally at the same time, doesn't always mean causation, meaning that thing caused the other thing. And so we just have to look at the science and really look at every single case, you know, by itself. But, you know, the narrative sometimes is that, you know, I got the COVID vaccine and then I got COVID, and it doesn't work. And that's not necessarily true.
Absolutely. And we must remember that we're talking about millions of people here. And so when you're dealing with millions of people, there are going to be, as Jessica, Dr. Queen could attest, all the doctors can attest to, when you have clinical trials, there's always going to be some outliers. Just one bad experience we have to report. You know, and we don't want that to happen, but sometimes there are bad experiences. So again, without having the full details regarding that person, but again, we do regarding the person of that school nurse, we do send our prayers and condolences to that family. Bishop, you got some of your members out here. Daryl is out here watching, and yeah, that's my friend also, and we got to get him on the show at some point too. And some other folks that have been watching. So thank you for this. I want to wrap up, and I told our guests to be prepared to give their prognosis for 2021, and that's how I want to conclude. So I want to start with you, Dr. Queen, then go to Dr. Sims, then we're going to let the senior person, Dr. Terrence Rowe.
All right, now.
close us out. I showed you the Psychiatric Times talking about optimistic prognosis for 2021. So Dr. Queen, give us your prognosis for 2021 as we close out this show.
Sure. So I definitely would say I feel more optimistic now than I did a year ago. I think, you know, science did a great job of getting us vaccines pretty quickly. And, you know, now we need to rely on the manufacturers and our local governments to get the vaccines to the people. So I think, you know, we're still very much in it, and we need to remain vigilant, as we discussed earlier. We're probably still several months away from reaching a high enough rate of vaccination to sort of reach that threshold of herd immunity. You know, I think there are probably ways in which the world will never quite be back to the old normal. But I think we'll be in a much better place a year from now. I think the variants are a wild card. Preliminary data suggests that all of our vaccines are still pretty effective against the variants. And there are some specific trials starting looking at that in particular. So there's a possibility that there will have to be booster vaccinations if we have more and more variants that can kind of escape our defenses. And then the other thing I just want to say is that pandemics are global. And so I think I have a lot of optimism for how things are looking in the United States. But, you know, more than 75% of the vaccine doses that have been administered have gone to 10 countries. And there are over 100 countries around the world where no one's gotten a single vaccine shot.
Wow.
And so there's very little value to us vaccinating all Americans and then the pandemic spreading and evolving all around the rest of the world, because we'll get more and more waves of new variants. So I am hoping that there'll be more cooperation between countries to really think about this global problem, because we're not living in a vacuum. And so I think that's another important variable to think about.
Excellent. Thank you. Well stated. Well stated. Dr. Sims.
I am cautiously optimistic for 2021. I think that if we continue to vaccinate like we are at a rate that we can get herd immunity in a short amount of time. But like Dr. Queen says, it's not just the United States. I mean, this is going to have to be a global initiative. And, the government's going to have to think about how do we get to the smallest town in Africa and the smallest town in India to get those people vaccinated, But I'm cautiously optimistic. And I think that it just has to be said, and I know people are going to go get so tired of this, is continue to wear your mask, continue to socially distance. I'm going to say it until I'm probably blue in the face. And if you're high risk, to stay at home. And until we get this under control, and we're not there yet. I mean, it's looking good, but we're not there yet. Just continue to be vigilant.
Gotcha. Wonderful. Well stated also. All right, Bishop, Dr. Rohn.
Well, there's not really much more I can add. My colleagues have certainly given a good synopsis of prognosis, which I agree is good. I think we have a positive outlook. I said before that many diseases that have ravaged this nation in the past are now distant memories. Smallpox, yellow fever, measles, mumps, polio. These were pandemics in our nation that involved our nation. And now these are diseases that are in distant memory because of vaccines. And I believe that this disease will be a disease of distant memory because of vaccines if we do the right thing. Because we came on here talking about church and worship, I just want to say that church is never going to be the same. If one thing this pandemic has taught us, it's taught us to focus our efforts on what's most important. We're really good at spending time doing things that really don't make an impact on people's lives in church. There's a lot of traditional things. There are a lot of things that just don't add a lot to the spiritual enrichment. And what we learned over this year is learning how to cut the fat and get to the point, have a powerful time of praise and worship, have a powerful word, a powerful time of ministry, and get out of Dodge. And that's unfortunately going to have to be the parameter moving forward, because we just can't afford to do church as we used to do it. One thing I will say, our church has forever changed. Sunday school is better than it's ever been, and it's all online. Wow. Zoom Sunday school is the numbers are up, the revenue is up, people enjoy it, people are being blessed, people across the nation are being impacted. Why would I go back to the other way of doing it? Especially now that it's really not safe to put people in a small room and teach them with all that virus floating in the air. It just makes sense to keep doing online. The way we worship, the way we praise, the way we do altar call, all that stuff is going to change in the foreseeable future until things get back to normal. Because as just speaking to all the pastors out there, you got to learn how to change your methodology. We do not change our message. Our message stays the same. But speaking from the realm of medical science, our methods have to change in order to accommodate and to facilitate the safety of our congregants as they come back into the sanctuary. God forbid that we don't exercise the wisdom that we've learned from this year and go back to trying to do things the way we used to and put people in harm's way. That's the greatest nightmare. We need to be able to do evangelism, to reach out to people with the love of Christ, but yet provide a safe environment, using reasonable precautions that will facilitate their spiritual enrichment, but protect their physical being. So we have a great prognosis, a good future coming up. Will we have to get another vaccine? I'm thinking we will, Dr. Queen. I'm thinking we probably will have to have some kind of booster or have to vaccinate people again in another year or two. Certainly this vaccine, this was not a one-time stop that says you'll never have to think about this again. as this disease mutates, as more strains come out, as the climate changes, as the disease pattern it changes, we're going to have to keep moving forward in the medical science and in the research lab to come up with newer versions of this vaccine, to keep up with these variants, to make sure that people stay vaccinated, to maintain herd immunity, to make sure that corona never becomes a pandemic issue again.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Wonderful. And Bishop, thank you, because you kind of answered one of the questions in my concluding statements. I just want to answer the question. So someone asked, will this be an annual vaccination? We don't know just yet. It may be very likely, but we don't know the answer to that question and how often will it be required. We don't know the answer to that question. Someone did ask about, can animals catch the coronavirus? Can animals catch and spread COVID-19 to people? And so that is one of the things that they have been studying. And I believe again, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the answer is yes to that. So Dexter Kennedy asked that question. And then someone asked, will this presentation be available after today? Absolutely. You can always go to my YouTube channel, Dr. Jonathan Shepard, and you can access all the shows regarding Ask the Doctors broadcasts. You can go over there and access them, and we'll be glad to accommodate. This again is from Ben Abel, and thank you so much for being such an active participant today with this discussion. And so please reach out to me. I haven't put my email address in the chat if you need to reach out to me in case there's some problems in accessing this. Let me just say this in my final comment. This is a quote. It says, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that's what you just addressed, Bishop Rohn, Dr. Rohn, that we have to be able to learn, relearn, and unlearn. And as we are going through this time, I want people to remain optimistic. I want people to remain hopeful, positive expectations for things to come. That's what hope stands for. And so we've instilled a little bit of knowledge inside of you all today, a little bit of hope. This has been wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Rohn. I appreciate you so much, sir. Thank you, Dr. Queen. Appreciate you. Dr. Sales, man, you knocked it out the ballpark today. And so, yes, we'll be having you back. All right.
Thanks, brother. I'll fit you in. Just let me know. Let me know.
So thank you. You can reach Hope Health Systems. Hope Health Systems is the sponsor of this program. It's a company that I work for, Chief Medical Director of, headquartered, I should say, more than just located, headquartered in Woodlawn, Maryland, but we're located throughout the nation, as we have really clients throughout the nation, really throughout the globe, as we do have satellite sites that do reach into even other countries that are providing mental health services for people. Hope Health Systems, you can reach us at Hope Health Systems, that's systems with the S.com. 410-265-8737 is our phone number. Thank you again, panelists. Hang tight. Again, sign off. I put my email address in there. Again, if you want to get the show, you can go to my YouTube channel. Please be safe. Enjoy your Easter weekend. I pray that you have a blessed and safe weekend, and see you back here next Friday. I'm excited about Friday's show. I've got some excellent guests, got an excellent topic, and looking forward to seeing you once again. All right, you take care.
Blessings.